All right, so this is the review of our Unit 4 quiz on proportions, and just wanted to walk you through some of the thinking. There are lots of ways to solve these problems. There's so many different ways to solve proportions. If you solved it in a different way than I did, that's just fine, but if you weren't sure how to solve it, I'm just trying to show you a way to solve each one. So the first problem says 12 kids got to go to the water park for $96. How many students could go for $132? So we need to just make sure that we have our, we have two proportions here, or two ratios to make a proportion here, and we just need to make sure that that we get our ratios sort of lined up. So it doesn't matter how you write this out, but you just need to know that there are 12 kids, and that those 12 kids, they sort of associate with $96. And so we need to find an equivalent ratio to that. So we want an equivalent ratio, but that equivalent ratio is going to need to have $132 in it, and we don't know how many kids. So we're going to say we have X kids. So there are lots of ways to solve this. If you So I'm just going to go with sort of the scale factor way. I know that 12 times 8 makes 96. Now, you may not know that. If you didn't know that, what you could do is you could say 96 divided by 12 equals 8. And that is going to give you this amount right here. And then, so now that I know I'm multiplying this by 8, that means I have to multiply this times 8. Whatever the number of kids are times 8 is going to need to equal 132. But because I know that, I can also go the other way. Like now that I know that it's, if I want to go one way, it's times 8. I know that if I wanted to go the other way, from 96 back to 12, I would divide by 8. And then I would need to divide by 8 here. So this is one where I know all of the information for. So I know that I will find X if I do 132 divided by 8 equals, is going to give me X. So on my calculator, I am going to type in 132 divided by 8, and I am going to get 16.5. So X here equals 16.5. So yeah, this is one way to solve it. Again, I said there are lots of ways. A lot of students prefer the butterfly method. A lot of students prefer the C method. We'll go over all of those methods, but I really like just remembering that, like, the point of proportions is that there is a multiplying relationship between each quantity. And if you can figure out what it is on one ratio, then you can use it to figure out the values of the other ratio. But an important thing to know here is we are also getting rated on our real world application, and so 16.5, you can't actually bring 16.5 kids to a water park. So if we were actually to calculate how many kids can go to the water park, we only have enough to bring 16 kids to the water park. So only 16 kids can go to the water park, because you can't bring half a child to a water park. You have enough money to bring half a kid to the water park, but you need another half, another half of the amount of admission to get in there. So anyway, that's how we solve the first one. Now I'm going to use these other ones to sort of go over other ways of solving these proportions. So another way is called the butterfly method, and the butterfly method is basically one where you look for, you cross multiply. So we're looking at the things in these two different circles, and let's see, I'll actually change one of the colors. So in the green circle, I have 12 and 72, and if this was an equation, I would multiply by 72 on both sides to get rid of that 72 that's being divided, so those would cancel out. The butterfly method is just a way of reminding me that to get rid of this, when I rewrite this, I will really just be doing 72 times 12. So I'm just multiplying the numbers that were sort of across from each other. And then on the other side, to get rid of this 30, I have to multiply it by 30 30 because it's being divided. So I'm going to multiply this side by 30, and those will cancel out. And I'm going to multiply this side by 30, and what I have left with here is n and 30. So I will get 30n on this side, and then I just solve this. So I know that 7 times 12, or 72 times 12, well, I know that 72 times 2 is 144. I know that 72 times 10 is 720. So when I add those together, 720 plus 144 is going to equal 864 equals 30 times n is just 30n. And then if I want to get n by itself, I divide by 30 and I divide by 30, and we should come up with 28.8. So 30n divided by 30 is just 1n, and then 864 divided by 30 is 28.8. I do that on my calculator. Okay, so for the next one, there's another method called the C method, which is sort of like finding the scale factor. The C method, I start here and I just draw a C around like this, and I know I am going to be, I know that if I want to figure out what do I need to multiply something by to get this number, I need to know what do I multiply 40 by to get this number. So in order to figure that out, I am going to do 12 divided by 40. Right, so here's 12 divided by 40, and that's going to give me the scale factor. When I divide this into 40 pieces, it's going to tell me what do I multiply this side by. And so when I do 12 divided by 40, I come up with 0.3. So this is my scale factor. It means that if I wanted to go this way, 40 times 0.3 is going to give me 12. So then I just use this information and I multiply the other quantity by that. So 12 divided by 40 is 0.3, and then 0.3 times 70 is going to give me my answer for this one, and that is, so then I'm going to multiply this side times 0.3, and that will give me 21. So I know that T has to equal 21. And then let's see, and then part C, problem C, I know that let's see, what's another method that I can use? I guess this is sort of like the butterfly method again, but if I want to get rid of my denominators, I multiply this side by x, and those cancel out. Then I have to multiply this side by x, and then I multiply one side by 23, and those cancel out. I have to multiply the other side by 23. This is just standard solving equations method. So when I rewrite this, I get 112x equals 7.3 times 23. And when I do 7.3 times 23, I come up with 167.9 equals 112x, and then if I want to get x by itself, I have to use the inverse operation. So I divide by 112 on both sides, and I will get this very long decimal that is 1.4999107. It's got a lot of stuff on it, but if you actually round it up to the nearest hundredth, which is what I asked you to, you can see that this is the hundredths place. And so the question is, so I see that it's 0.049, but then what do? I have to round this, I have to round the 9 up. So this 49 actually rounds up to 50 because there's a 9 right there. So if I rounded this up to the nearest hundredth, I should get 1.50. Now, there was a problem while I was doing this one, and some students had calculators that were rounding, and they were getting, instead of, some students were doing this in a way where they were using the C method. And those students, when they did, if you had certain calculators and you did 7.3 divided by 112, you were getting strange numbers that were rounded to the nearest hundredth. And then when you would do that and multiply it by 23, you would get a random number here. I think one of them was 1.61, and one of them was like 1.38 or something, or 1.39. They were off by just a little bit, and it was because of a rounding error. All of the thinking was good, but it wasn't even their fault. It was that the calculator was rounding strangely, and I ran into it myself. And so if you came up with either of those, if you came up with either of these two answers that I already have, or if I think the other ones were 1.61 and 1.39, I think. If you came up with either of those, I still counted it correct because I don't think you did anything wrong. I think your calculator was doing something wrong. Anyways, so that's how you do 1 and 2. I'm going to stop this video and come back for problem 3 and continuing on the other side.